Oh, America. What a great continent. And the America we see today is thanks to a series of events that in the past helped shape all the countries inside. Events like, for example, civil wars, independence wars, industrialization process, feminist movement, etc. The early 19th centuries, America was split into the south part being like a backyard for the Europeans because all the countries we know today as Latin America, by that time, were just European colonies. While in the north, the United States was advancing at an impressive rate with an impressive velocity. The US had a very strong ideal, what historians now call manifest destiny, but at the time was just the belief that since America was doing so good, their destiny and their duty with God was to expand. The first liberalist movement we'll see in this decade took place. A country with most of its population being slaves achieved their independence. With Toussaint Louverture as their leader and with a strong feeling of nationalism, they achieved their independence against the French. In the next 2 decades, countries like Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, and Colombia will achieve their independences too, making Latin America start to feel like Latin America and not like Europe. In the mid-1800s, a lot of important events took place in the US. In 1848, a feminist movement was started, mainly because women did not feel like just the companion of men. They believed that they should have the right to vote and to have a work on their country too. This movement will go on until 1920, when national female suffrage will be finally achieved. In 1850, a bipartisan system that we still know today started. The Democrats against the Republicans, both fighting for the majority of voice in the US government. Also, in 1850, the industrialization in the US was at its best. Before, people needed to do all the hard work in factories, doing very long shifts. But now, they could just let the machines do the work and they take care of the machines. There was a very big patent system, and not all inventors came out with new inventions like the telephone, the light bulb, and the railroad system throughout all the country. The industrialization process is one of the most important events of that century. Ms. Elena Orozco, a high school teacher, explained us why.
Why was industrialization so important in the US history?
Well, I think it's very important is the way the United States shows the world how this country can become like a grown-up kind of country. The United States has always had a lot of influence of Great Britain on their history, on their economy, process and models. And I think it created like a new stage for the Americans to have that advance in their culture. And actually, I think the country was ready to embrace this new change.
What were the causes for it to happen?
The main causes, I believe, the United States realized they had all these natural resources as Great Britain were happening in their time. By the time Great Britain was the first nation to expand the industrialization back in the 18th century. So the United States saw that successful model for Great Britain. So they decided to say, wait, I mean, we have all these natural resources, most likely in the northern United States. So we can explode those resources and become a stronger nation and become like a strong economy due to these new factors of industrialization. So they decided to increase all these possibilities to become a stronger economy.
From your personal point of view, was the industrialization process of the US a cause for the American Civil War?
Well, actually, the conflict, the civil war is a conflict inside the same territory. And I think the northern side of the United States wanted to get their economy and their industry stronger. For instance, I'm going to give you like a very simple example. They needed cotton, right? And they get it from the southern plantation, but also they needed the labor hand or labor force to continue working with the cotton at north. So people from the north didn't care if the new workers from the south were slaves or were farmers from a nice and decent family. They didn't care if they were very conservative or they were very radicals. They didn't care any of that. What they wanted is the work they could produce. So I think in a certain way, a very important and sensitive aspect of the Civil War was that people were not content with those decisions from the industry spheres in that country.
Thank you.
Thank you very
What's
much.
the effect on the economy?
Well, the main effect, it was this big wave of demand. People were knowing that all these products were available. They work hard and try to have as many hours of work as possible so they can increase a little bit their income or their salaries, and they start to consume more of the articles that were available. And also, United States increased all these skills in battle. They have the industry, and they were also, besides covering all these basic items for people's daily lives, they also start to discover all these big industry in regards of war items. United States started to produce these kind of specific weapons, or also simple things from the uniforms for the army. They could produce the uniforms more efficiently. And I think the effects before the world was that they get stronger. They would acquire more power, and that's something that was very evident for them as a very national timeline, and also in front of people's eyes around the world. When they started, I remember we talked about this, when they started to expand their market, they actually needed, according to their production, they needed more spaces or more places to sell those big amounts of items. So they needed to search for a specific place where people can find those articles, and also they needed to explore. What do I have to do with all this? So they started to try to avoid some. They tried to find a new markets outside the United States to position those finished goods. Also, I think another effect from the Industrial Revolution or the industrialization in the United States was the fact that farmers would also needed to be part of the industry, not only on the plantations, but also they needed to work as a labor force for the industrialization areas in the United States. So those people were taken out of the farms, of the houses, and they will settle now in what we know as suburbs. Okay, so people needed to get more active. They not only rely on the harvest of Eugenia, but also they needed to learn how to go to a different job and get all this information about how they're going to develop one specific job. And also they needed to have skills to cover that position.
Your personal point of view, was the industrialization process of the U.S. a cause for the American Civil War?
Well, actually, the conflict, the Civil War is a conflict inside the same territory. And I think the northern side of the United States wanted to get their economy and their industry stronger. For instance, I'm going to give you like a very simple example. They needed cotton, right? And they get it from the southern plantation, but also they needed the labor hand or labor force to continue working with the cotton up north. So people from the north didn't care if the new workers from the south were slaves or were farmers from a nice and decent family. They didn't care if they were very conservatives or they were very radicals. They didn't care any of that. What they wanted is the work they could produce. So I think in a certain way, a very important and sensitive aspect of the Civil War was that people were not content with those decisions from the industry spheres in that country.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Was the industrialization process really the cause for the American Civil War? Well, if or if not, the Civil War still happened. In 1861, the US was split in two. The South having a lot of slaves for the cotton and tea farms, while in the North the industrialization was at its boom and no slave was needed. A war began, being Abraham Lincoln the leader in the North and Ulysses Grant the leader in the South. 4 long years of war passed, and the slaves were fighting more than justified. They were fighting for their freedom. In 1865, finally, the blacks won. America was a slave-free country. No one can own another person, and every human being was equal. The 19th century was a century who shaped how America looks today. It created a strong feel of nationalism throughout all the continent and made advances very clear in the South and in the North. Thanks to this century, America could stop being just a colony from Europe and start being the continent of America.